For months, we've heard the pronouncements, the justifications, and the promises. The fuel subsidy is gone, but has it really delivered on what we were told? Was it in the end worth it? That's the question we are wrestling with today. We're diving deep into the realities of subsidy removal. Did the removal lead to increased investment in critical sectors as promised, or did it primarily benefit a select few? We'll also tackle the heated debate surrounding alternative solutions. Was there a better way to manage the fuel subsidy issue? And we'll explore the social fallout. Are Nigerians better off? Or are they simply bearing the brunt of another policy gamble? Get ready for a frank and potential uncomfortable conversation, because the truth is, there are no easy answers.
Subsidy in Nigeria started in the 70s. So it meant that we've had different ways of getting it done. When it gets to a point where these people are not getting the relief and someone else is gaining from that structure. So when you look at what all marketing companies had, the traditional overtime, they built terminals, they built pipeline infrastructure. Yes. The question is this: as a country, do you want to jettison all that because we now have a refinery?
Mr. Jide Pratt is adept in supply chain management, finance, sales and marketing, CEO at Iona Nigeria, and country pilot manager for Trade Grid, the first digital oil and gas marketing.
And I ask this: if you wake up in the morning and the refinery reduces prices by 55 naira, where on a P&L are they taking that 55 naira from? Every day, and learning, understanding. And in my career, I've been blessed to work with companies that enable you learn and grow. So the first thing is this: do we have these people in the regulators? We have these people. They're people that when I started my career, I looked at as legends. Some left, some are still there. They have this understanding.
So thank you, JP, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to finally have you on the Energy Hack Show. So I'm going to ask you straight up question. Subsidy, was it a scam?
Thanks for talking to me, Dami. And I try to give answers that are very, very straightforward. In my opinion, no. Was it well managed? Definitely not. And just for some context, subsidy in Nigeria started in the 70s. Yes. So it meant that we've had different ways of getting it done. The end in mind, if you look at that, then what it meant was that the whole aim of having a subsidy was some form of palliatives, some form of economic relief for the people of Nigeria. Now, I said that to say this: when it gets to a point where these people are not getting the relief and someone else is gaining from that structure, that's why I say it's not a scam, but it was poorly managed.
Okay,
I think that would be my answer for that question.
and I'm glad you said this, because if you look at other countries, China had like trillions of dollars in subsidy in 2022. The same time we ran subsidy last, right? Officially, at least. US all have this fossil fuel subsidies. Of course, it's reducing due to other things. And you see that it still runs. Even India has it, So it became a whole discussion as if at that time that subsidy needs to end because of, there was this floating, maybe misconception, as you might put it, that it's a scam. So it's good to know that, to discuss these things. When I have discussions with people and they're telling me it's a scam, I'm like, okay, what makes subsidy on its own a scam? Except if it's management issue, and all that. So it's good for you to say that. So my question to you now is, so removing subsidy, fast forward when we removed it in 2023, right? We know it started from during Goodluck's time. We had Occupy Nigeria that stopped it. He wanted to remove it. Then come this administration that finally got removed in 2023. Was it a necessity, or is it just another policy gimmick?
Okay, so let's go back to 2019. Like you rightly said, during the Goodluck Ebele Jonathan administration, they attempted to remove subsidy. At that point in time, they said it was too big to manage. So maybe the corrective measure on something that is bad is go in and look at what is bad and put controls around it. So at that time, the general public basically revolted, saying, no, you can't take the only thing that is a social net for us from us. So it didn't fly. In 2023, and the famous statement is that subsidy is gone. At that time, the new president came in and looked at it that this country is bleeding. The economy is bleeding. However, we've not been able to put a rein on the corruption around subsidy. So first and foremost, to stem the tide, let us stop it.
Okay.
That said, let's move forward. What makes a subsidy amount, and let's back up a bit. If crude oil is the basis of petroleum products, it does mean that every time the cost of crude goes up or goes down, it affects the price of what we will call the distillates.
Yes.
Petrol, diesel, jet fuel, any and everything down in that line. So it means that there's a direct correlation.
Yes.
Crude oil is a commodity. And more often than not, people who are oil producers sell crude oil for federation revenue, but they don't sell it in Naira. We're going somewhere. It means that they sell it in the US dollars or greenback, so that that revenue comes to the country and then it becomes the basis of projecting a budget. Immediately those prices start to go, there's something that is really, really important here. To change it to Naira, you must multiply it by an exchange rate.
Yes.
So it means that if the economy, and now we're talking about fiscal and monetary policy, if they don't go the way it should go, then what it means is that if the exchange rate continues to go high, the landed cost in Naira increases. If the government now pegs it and say we must sell at 600 Naira per liter, the day it is 800 Naira per liter as landed, there is a 200 Naira deficit that needs to be subsidized.
Yes.
So I said that to say this. What it now means is that as it started growing, we must also have at the back of our mind that as at May 29, 2023, there are levels of about 40 to 50 Naira per liter in terms of subsidy based on calculations at that time.
Okay.
This grew to about 200 Naira or 300 Naira. So what the president must have been trying to do is stem the tide. But sadly, they stemmed the tide in terms of subsidy. They didn't stem the control around where the monies were flying to. And most importantly, they didn't stem the exchange rate. So I think that would be a good way to land this question.
that can go so many ways,
Absolutely.
what you just said now.
Absolutely.
And so for you, right, just to nail it, right, and again, it could be either or, you know, do you think it was necessary to take out subsidy? Because as we said earlier on, we could have just maybe fixed the issues around this subsidy. Because at the end of the day, as we established, subsidy is not new.
Absolutely.
And it's not an issue, really. People do it everywhere. So, you know, you have subsidies in transportation.
Correct.
You know, worldwide. No, I've not even seen a government entity that runs transportation that is profitable. Yeah. You know, it's subsidized in some sort. So, again, the direction should it be to solve, whilst keeping the subsidy, the corruption around it, in quote, or is it easier to just take it out and say, you know what, pay the true value of it?
So two things. And for me, I think it was the right decision.
Okay.
I think the implementation was wrong.
Okay.
So look at it this way. If I'm subsidizing 15 Naira per liter on a petroleum product, and the market is in my favor, which means that as at the time where it's 15 Naira, there's a parity. I must set a threshold that how much am I willing to subsidize if it gets to 70 or 80 Naira.
Okay.
So I thought the moment the president said subsidy is gone, it was okay because he wanted to reduce the drain on resources on the federation account.
Okay.
What didn't happen was that there was no accountability that for what you would call it, followed that. So why did I say this? If we said subsidy is gone on the 29th of May 2023, how much subsidy happened 30 months after that? And in what amount?
Okay.
So it means that if we paid zero in that period for subsidy, it means that in terms of revenue, and let's follow this, we have gained X amount.
Okay.
So it meant that on the 30th of May, June, what should have happened was that someone from the Ministry of Finance should have articulated a document saying that this was the savings from May 29, 2003 till 30th of June, 2003. Okay. This is where we have allocated these resources to. X in transportation, Y in social investment schemes, and let's say Z in something else. What does that do? It means that the trust deficit has reduced.
Okay.
Because you've brought in accountability. And I think that's what was lost in that moment. Track the resources that have been wasted, but put a control around it and share probity. It must become open knowledge. This is what has happened here. And this is why it has happened.
Okay.
When that moment was lost, you now had things later on saying that, but the government's oil company is still importing. It's still putting subsidy in their books. So what it meant is that in terms of also corporate governance on that side, those are things we lost out. Was it the right time? Yes. Was the implementation right? No. Was the winning movement to begin to build on it and show accountability? Was it achieved? No.
Okay, so I want to pick you up on some of those points, right? You say it's right. I actually personally agree that that was the best decision to do, to be able to clean up house properly. However, for the implementation part, right, I could argue that what best way to just hit the ground running. If you wait, again, as we said, if you try and good luck, tried it.
Yeah.
If we go that route of slow movement, it might never work. So again, you have to hold the bull by the horn, right? So, but in terms of you looking at it from a point of view of that we need to see where these funds are going to, right? We already knew that, give or take, it was about 10 billion, right? Dollars.
Yeah.
Yes, that we did in subsidy in 2022. So because of crude prices, of course, inflation and everything, that would affect it. But however, if I get you right, it's more of allocation. Okay, so what did you do with the savings? So it's more of that communication that we can't see to give us that trust, as you mentioned. So is it more of, would you say that, is that really an implementation, or would you say it's more of the communication to people?
So you're only going to communicate what you've done. So it means that if you have implemented something, then you've taken the first step, which is why I went back to say that for me, it was the implementation.
Okay.
If you begin again with the end in mind, if we had implemented and you have a figure of 10 billion, then what it is that you're telling people what you've done with the 10 billion to garner trust, to gain trust.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've implemented already. X amount has been saved between May 29, 2023 and June 30th, 2023. You have implemented. It means that the revenue that was going to a payment of subsidy is coming into the coffers, quote and unquote, as a savings. So now this savings, you're now saying that, look, this is what we're doing with the money that we saved between May 29 and June 30th. In this case, you're communicating. But let's be clear. You implement first, and then you communicate by saying, this is what we are doing.
Okay.
That way, you've brought in some levels of accountability.
Okay.
We talked about India. And a lot of times when we talk about Nigeria, a lot of people say, Nigeria is complex. We've got 220 million people. My first retort to that question is that India has 1.2 billion people. China has 1 billion people.
Yeah.
How are they getting it right? So it's still going back to accountability. But Dami, you can only communicate something you've implemented. If not, it's a wish list. And what you find out is that I will do we are going to became the bane of the administration in 2023. Now, in hindsight, we can say that if they had 6 months plans, then it meant that they had communicated a target. And if we saved 10 billion in the month of June, July, August, September, October, that would have been the plan. So it means that implementation is 30 days every month you've implemented, and you've pushed communication to say, this is what you're doing with what you have saved. How many roads in kilometers are going to be built? How are we going to solve a lot of the power conundrums that we have? So these would have been articulated. But again, I say, you must implement first before you communicate it. And I think that is what was missing.
Okay.
That is what was missing.
Okay, so followed, but I could argue with you that, the government had a lot of palliatives and things to do as well. So again, they gave out a lot of food. They gave out a lot of the gas initiative for CNG. That's a lot of expense too, because you are giving out free kits. You are doing that just to alleviate these things, So, and that's all part of implementation, if you want to say it. So maybe it might not be time to communicate the real use into other things like roads, other things. Maybe it's still a thing of, since we started this thing almost abruptly, which I think you have to do, because if you keep saying, oh, because of we want to do this, that's why forces will stop you at the end of the day. So my thought process is, could it be we are a bit ahead of the gun, or patients will let us know when that will be communicated, since a lot of palliatives are still going on to let people, as we settle down into these new realities. And I think people are settling down a bit. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel people are settling down a bit more. So could it be that, a bit more, it's just almost 2 years, it's not yet time. Could it be that the next phase is now, okay, this is now we're pushing it into food. Now we're pushing it into, because again, they save on subsidy doesn't mean they'll spend it in the oil and gas or in the power sector or this. It could be spent into education. It could be spent into this. So could it be that is that little bit of time that can be pushed into?
It could be, but if you operate in a government where the populace do not trust you,
okay,
it goes back to what I'm saying, then you lost a winning moment to garner their trust. 220 million people, and if you look at poverty levels in Nigeria, it's quite high. So it means that if someone doesn't eat in 24 hours, he needs some assurances that he will eat in the next 24, or she will eat in the next 24. So if you say, I want to delay the communication, then what you're doing is delaying hope. That's what you're delaying, because what you're doing is that people are hoping and wishing. After the subsidy was gone, the president almost immediately came out and said, you know what, these multiple exchange rates are not going to work. So in terms of intent, he was clear about his intention. You make a point when you say people are coming to terms with reality now. But the question is that for those who have, and I need to be as frank, have died in this period, they died not because there was nothing ahead, but because there was no hope in terms of the communication after the implementation. Between 2022 and now, and I stand to be corrected, I don't think that more people have moved up in the poverty line as against going lower into it. So it was hope. There was no hope. There was no clear path. If you do a credit system and loan people money, credit is hope. If you give someone a bag of rice, 5 kg bag of rice, once they cook it for 3-4 times based on the size of their family, hope dies. If you give someone 10,000 naira under a social investment scheme, that is fleeting cash. If, on the other hand, you gave someone a grinding machine, you gave someone a 1.5 kVA solar inverter, what it means is that you've given them a productive means of earning. These are the things that should have been communicated ab initio that were not. So while we look, they did it.
They did those things.
Yes, but they didn't communicate them.
So you don't think it was blown out because you need to show people more?
Because the first thing was that you wanted to buy trust.
Okay.
You're taking hard decisions. So it's stakeholder management. If the 220 million people are not stakeholders, then who is? We talked about the CNG initiative.
CNG
That is something I'm very, very big on. But the question is this: do we wait 24 months to say that we've moved from one mother station to 150? Or do we, as we're going along, begin to spread this information? Again, I say, while some things were happening in the background, people needed to know what was happening. In my opinion,
like
that is how it should have
noise. You need to make noise
the
about
noise. Social media, TV. But let people know. You've had so many issues where people tell you that CNGs explode, CNG. But the truth of the matter is that CNG is methane.
Yeah.
Methane is lighter than air.
It floats.
So if you get, it doesn't stay, it dissipates.
Yeah.
So you see, while that is a fallacy of people saying, it's also a fact of they haven't been communicated with.
Yes.
And where you do not communicate, you leave a gap.
Okay.
Again, I say, implement and communicate. It gives hope.
Okay, perfect.
This is my opinion.
I love that.
Yeah.
Staying on the theme of misconceptions about this subsidy removal and subsidy, I actually asked, in my own kind of groups and people in general, and a lot of misconceptions. I also checked online what the misconceptions were. I want to post some of them to you, and let's take a stab at it and see how it goes. The first one is fuel subsidy removal will automatically reduce fuel price. You laugh. A lot of Nigerians, had this thought. It's because of this scarcity. And again, I recall it was 165?
Yeah.
Then it shot up to about 400 and something,
correct.
then 600 and
Correct.
something. And today we're about
900 and something.
60, retail, 925, depending on where you get it from. So, people expected that. I don't think people really understand, and, I would love you to shed a bit more light on that misconception.
Okay. So, two things. And while you talked about subsidy, if you look at this logically, if something is subsidized, then what it means is that we're not paying the full price. That's a fact. So if you remove the subsidy, it goes to say that if you're going to pay the full price, it's going to be more expensive. So, I mean, that's thinking 101.
Yes.
But you see, going back to what we're saying in terms of communication, and I'll go a step further. We've talked about subsidy and the basis of the fact that if you remove the subsidy, the price is higher. That's one. There was some narrative, people saying that, look, if the subsidy is gone and the refineries start to work.
That was another question. But yeah, go
ahead.
Then
what will happen is that because we're producing locally, prices will go down. At every forum, I kept on telling people, this is incorrect. Two things trigger refining or production of petroleum product. A price of crude. If you run a refinery, then it means that there's a cost to refining to get to what you call an ex-refinery price.
Okay.
If you go the route of import, it means that you're going to load product in a vessel and you're going to be guided by the petroleum indices prices. So if you used Platts, if you used ICE, if you used Oxy, Bob, Eurobob, any of those prices has a dictate that is annexed to crude oil prices. Once you land this thing, and I try to tell people about how people get to landing prices, and it's some form of price discovery. I know how much this is per metric ton. I know this is the cost of a vessel. I also know that inspecting, finance, all these costs come into a certain amount of money. So let's even say it was $100 a ton. You're going to add it to that indices price. But don't forget, this is still in dollars.
Yes.
So it means that once you get it to a final landing price per liter in US dollars, you have to multiply it by an exchange rate. Now, that exchange rate is not a function of where crude oil is. It's a function of the fiscal and monetary as well as balance of payment issues locally.
Yeah.
So what that means is that when it's up, if you multiply that coefficient I have in cents per liter, you get a higher amount. But when the policies that the government has put in place seem to be working, quote and unquote, and the naira exchange rate begins to drop, then you're getting a lower landing cost. A lot of people did not wait to try and understand the logic, which is why one of the things I've been telling people is that there needs to be a price discovery model. What does a price discovery model do? It shows you all the parameters that go into the build-up of a landed price of petroleum product if I import it, and an ex-refinery price if I produce locally. There must be a balance, because if the country, Nigeria as a country, we seem to be pushing what you call a free market. Subsidy is gone. Let's have one currency exchange window. So it means that going into regulations, it now means that every time a liter comes out from the refinery, it should be compared with a landing cost. And let's not get it wrong. The refinery came to solve a problem that was over 15 to 20 years old. We did not have functional refineries for that long. So while it came to do that, we must also look at the fact that in every economy or system, we must avoid price gouging. So if you have price discovery templates, then it now comes to the market that, look, the refinery is giving me at 10 naira. If I import it, it's at 9 naira today, or it's at 12 naira today. There must be a system to compare. Because while the refinery is a $20 billion investment, there are investments that are as old as the industry. So when you look at what oil marketing companies had, the traditional over time, they've built terminals, they've built pipeline infrastructure. The question is this: as a country, do you want to jettison all that because we now have a refinery? The trick of every refinery is to try and get to 60 to 70%
operating.
And at that stage, they want to be able to make sure that, look, they're making money. So in doing that, they're going to be able to sell locally
and
internationally. Number one, the Nelson Index of that refinery is brilliant. It's the largest single train refinery in the world. But what does the price recovery or discovery model do? It gives everybody an open line of sight to, if you land today, this is the price. If you buy from the refinery, this is the price. And I ask this: if you wake up in the morning and the refinery reduces prices by 55 naira, where on a P&L are they taking that 55 naira from?
On what basis?
And on what basis? And if they decide to be a charity, that's fine.
Yeah, which is fine.
But it cannot be that there's nothing to compare it with. In my opinion, we should never have 100% of refinery or 100% of importation. There must be a mechanism that shows based. And if you go to Kenya is still pretty much regulated. Ghana, Rwanda. So while there's regulations in some of these places, Ghana seems to be a free market. But there's a price recovery if you went to the regulator and says, look, regulator, today, what is the guiding template or the guiding principle for a landed cost of petroleum product? What is the extra? You can see it. Sadly, we live in a country where we don't see those. So everybody guess. And it goes back to what you started this with in terms of information and in terms of fallacies or truths that people put online or offline because of what they understand or what they do not understand. I think we can hang it on that.
You've touched on two important things that I was going to actually dive deeper into. I might as well just talk about it now. The first is transparency. Do you think with the removal of subsidy now, everything is a lot more transparent? I already have a feeling of what you're going to say, but I want you to tell me, especially the pricing template. During subsidy, at least there was a somewhat template. There was a template. Yeah. You know how much it is. You know how much MPA everyone will get paid.
Correct.
You have that drawdown. But now it's, I personally don't know what personally directly know. I can estimate what importation can be and all that. But in general, is it transparent enough, or are we getting there, or what is it essentially now? Is it efficient as well?
It's not. It's not transparent.
Okay.
It's not efficient. When information is not clear and concise from where it should come from, you leave room for a lot of people to just speculate. Dami, you're in the industry, so you know. But you see, between yourself and myself sat here and 220 million people, We're probably among the 10% or 15% that have a deep understanding of it. We've been blessed. Some of us have been blessed to be in the industry for over 2 decades.
Yeah, legends like you.
Well, I don't know about legends, but you see, for me, it was a day of waking up every day and learning, understanding. And in my career, I've been blessed to work with companies that enable you learn and grow. So the first thing is this. Do we have these people in the regulators? We have these people. The people that when I started my career, I looked at as legends. Some left, some are still there. They have this understanding. They might be stifled in terms of different pressure from different points. But you see, to get transparency, it means that people must be able to go to the source. If the regulators, for instance, and you've got the NUPRC and you've got the NMDPRA, oil and gas regulators, it doesn't go beyond 2 of them.
Yes.
It also means that if I went to any of their websites as a JP, I don't know the industry, I just want information. Data should be there. So in terms of efficiencies, we're not there yet. Some while back, you heard there was a lot of noise about the fact that what is Nigeria producing in X amount of crude oil? And we had 3 different sources of information that had 3 different. So the first thing is this. If crude oil comes out from the ground, it can come out as just crude oil or a combination of water, crude, and dirt.
Condensate, yeah.
If you add the 2 figures together, then you're getting a different figure from someone who is not adding the 2 figures together. It also means that in terms of data, there should be somewhere on the NUPRC data. I don't need to go to the OPEC website to go and get reported reports of what Nigeria is producing out of Nigeria. They ideally, even though you say we're cooperating, and that's what they call it cooperating countries in terms of how this information is published. We need to get to efficiency levels where with the click of a button, the regulators locally are showing this is what it is today. And this is the buildup of crude from so and so place. This is what it is from so and so terminal. And this is what is content is it. That's number one. If you take this to the downstream side, in the industry, there used to be something in the past called Operation White.
Okay, tell me more.
So Operation White was a system where there was a war room in NNPC where we needed to see where every liter of petroleum product was coming from and where it was going to. So it meant that everybody that lives from any different terminal, wherever it is in Nigeria, will send in an email, a schedule, a data sheet that speaks to, we've loaded 15 liters, we've loaded 20 liters, this is the total we have lifted today, and this is where we have bridged it to.
Doesn't that still exist from trucker data? I mean,
no, fantastic question. Fantastic question. So now you find out that every individual has that. But if we went to the NMDPRA website now, you'd probably see data of 2023.
Okay.
If my memory serves me right and my clock is right, it means that today is the 12th of February, 2025. You can't have that much gap in data and we say we're efficient. No. So it means that that data house has to be central. What you find now is that people who have an understanding tend to share. I've been doing some price modulations and sharing it for Dami as long as I can remember. Because I was blessed to learn it. And for me, it's not a secret. But you see, I'm not that resource that quote and unquote can be quoted. I'm blessed to see that some people do quote me. But you see, it's knowledge of what it is that I try to share. But it should be that if I clicked on the website of the regulator today, that means we must get to where people can plan based on those figures. I need to add this. Remember when we had PEF, Petroleum Equalization Fund?
Yes.
It was a case of bridging claims and bridging allowances. So it was a net off kind of position. For every liter you bring in between zone 1 and 2, you contribute.
Yes.
And then from zone 3 and above, zone 2 and above, you claim from the fund. But there was someone then, I believe her name was Mrs. Kasali. Mrs. Kasali came in from the private sector, from mobile, if my memory serves me right. And that's how we got to what was called Aquila. So Aquila was a tag, an RFID tag that was put on trucks. And then with an RFID scanner or barcode, you're able to tag from loading point to discharge point. So that way, people are not making spurious claims. It's data. If you went to the PEP website today, you don't see those things. Now, PEP became, how will I put it, entangled into NMDPRA. Yeah. But the question is that talking about efficiency of data, we're not there. So that means a lot of people will continue to fill in the gaps with whether it's true or whether it's not. I recall,
was it not last year when on stage, it was just floating around the truck out data after subsidy dropped to about what? Was
20 or 30
million, which was corrected immediately that, oh, guys, it's wrong. I think it was someone from NMVPR said, no, it's wrong. I said what was the truth. I don't listen to what was circulating online. And these days, we get that in the industry so much that, what is true, So I think what you're alluding to makes sense. Yeah. That transparency, that put out what is real. So no one disputes and everybody plans towards that, And I think that would help our industry a lot. And again, one of my passion is the fact that, I asked many people when the CNG started, just to divert a bit. And a lot of people on the street don't understand it. And I was shocked. Like, people didn't actually understand it. I felt like it's everywhere. But I'm in the industry, so it felt like it's all over my timeline. Yeah. It's all over my social media. It's all over, like, that's all I see because I'm in the industry. So I felt like everybody's seeing the same thing, So I got carried away with that to come to understand. And I'm just emphasizing your point that a lot of people don't truly understand these things. And it's our duty for those in the industry to enlighten people so that, again, if we want to catch up, if we want to make things work, people need to understand. And that's the only time that we can, convert people, whether it's conversion or at least understand why some decisions are made and take away some of these misconceptions.
If you don't mind me to interject, time to time, I found myself that people are asking me, what are your opinions on this? Would you like to come and speak on this? And it's back to what you say. If you know something, tell people about it. You're not guessing these things. And I keep on saying that I've been blessed to be in this industry for quite a while. So if you keep that truth to you, then it doesn't help this information being rightly or wrongly put out. I one of the things I do, I walk and run from time to time. And I remember, I can't remember where I was crossing, but there was this group of young people having a conversation. Okay. And what I overheard, I just taken off my headphones and I overheard that, no, you can actually use CNG to cook.
That's a serious issue.
Normally I would not have, but at that point I just said, hi, how are you guys? Are you all good? You can't use CNG to cook. CNG is natural gas. It's compressed. However, you can use LPG. Dami, I spent 20 minutes that I didn't have. But I want to believe that when I left that place, so one of them now said, what's your name? What's your name? I was now like, and I said, okay, you know what? There's a YouTube channel I think you can. So I just gave a YouTube channel. One of them follows me till today. And we now have sessions. I'm not a teacher. But you see, an opportunity to correct a wrong notion is one that you must never lose.
Yes.
So there's so many places. And I talk about the National Orientation Agency. If you notice, they're a bit more vocal now.
Yes.
I think for a long period they were asleep. No disrespect to them. But it now goes that in communication, you must be able to find the person who can disseminate the right information, drag people to listen to it. So everybody in the oil and gas sector, whether we like it or not, and I always say this, if you've done 5 years in the industry, you owe it to the country to put out information that is correct. Sadly, I'm not very, very shy when it comes to information and putting it out. I'm not at all. And I don't think I owe anybody any apologies, because for me, if someone listens to you and learns one or two things, that person is a chain, because what it means is that person will teach one or two. It's a train the trainer. And before you know it, the information that we begin to have, you'll be amazed at how much information they have in a country like Zambia. Last trip to Lusaka, I was talking to some young people, and the access to information that they had, but it's also because they have places where they can go to grab
check,
data. If
In
you
real
don't
time.
have in real time, then you have a problem.
In
You have
real
a lack
time.
of that.
In real time.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I said there were two questions.
Yes.
And the second one is the refineries. You touched on it, right? Surely removal of subsidy will favor them. How you look at it.
Yeah.